So, what you guys been working on this week?
Oh man, get this. So we were off on an away mission, right? And we found upon this cave, and in this cave there was like a body lying on this kind of crypt-looking thing. No one else on this planet, right? The entire rest of the planet had been wiped out, but this body was perfectly preserved. So we went over and we woke it up, and it turns out it's an android, right? It's an artificial being with this incredible ponetrosic brain that can think about things way faster than any human being can, and perfectly designed. We discovered a secret laboratory behind the cave, in which we found out that this android was designed by a human from Earth, a doctor, a scientist, and also in there we found that this android had there was another disassembled android who was this android's kind of evil twin sort of situation, right? So this all kind of played out, and but the android, we think it's really shady. So in order to help him adjust to life on the Enterprise, we decided to leave him in the care of the person who could probably empathise with and care for him the most.
Oh, who's that?
O'Brien.
Podcasts. A Frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast Captain Slug. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new episodes, to seek out new jokes and new references, to split infinitives that no one has split before. Captain Slug, Stardate 77. These are the continued voyages of this podcast. I'm Eddie. Mark's here as well. Mark, how you doing? How you been?
I'm fine. Except, I just about 10 minutes before we started recording this, I discovered that H-Bomber Guy has released yet another 4-hour-long video essay, and I've got a lot to do this weekend.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw it pop up and was like, oh, YouTube and plagiarism. That'll be interesting. I might give that a watch before the podcast. And then I looked at it. It was like 3 hours and 41 minutes. Yeah. Do him and Dan Olsen have a bet as to who could produce the longest video essay. I think Mia Mulder might be in it as well, because her Is the Economy Mad at Us video that she put up the other day is like 3 hours and 30 minutes.
Yeah. I can't believe that I now need to put aside the same amount of time for an H-Bomber Guy video as I do for Killers of the Flower Moon. And you know what? I'm fine with that. That one about the sound effect in the Messiah video game.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's fantastic. The thing I will say about that is this: Martin Scorsese, if you want to complain that cinema is dead, right? Don't make movies that are the length of a Netflix miniseries, because I'm not going to go sit in the cinema for 3 hours and watch something that hasn't got a Mjolnir in it, right? Okay. If you make 22 other movies leading up to that 3-hour movie, then yeah, you've earned it. Fair enough. But if you're just going to make a 3-hour movie, make a Netflix movie, make a Netflix miniseries that I can watch at home, because that's what I'm going to do with Killers of the Flower Moon.
I mean, this has been talked to death by everyone, but I'm super on board with putting intervals in movies.
Yeah.
I don't think it. I think if look, quite often we'll be in my house watching a movie on like ITV or like 5 Action, as occasionally happens, and I will go off on one about the placement of ad breaks. Because they never make any sense. And sometimes they'll happen in the middle of a scene. Sometimes they'll happen at the setup of a joke, and then the payoff will be after the ads. But do you know
make
who...
sure you watch the ads.
Yeah. Do you know who wouldn't do that to a Martin Scorsese movie? Martin Scorsese. So we let him decide when the adverts are coming. Great.
Or hear me out. If you want to make a 3-hour-long movie, here's what I say. You go back to what you cut, you put it back in, and you make 2 movies. right? Work for The Godfather. You can do a part 1 and a part 2 of stuff like this. I mean, as Godfather proved, you can't really do a part 3. But I'm gonna...
Yeah.
If you want to do 2... Killers of the Flower Moon part 1, and then do a part 2 when the moon gets killed. I don't know what happens in the movie.
I said Killers of the Flower Toon.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Good. I thought that didn't get the reaction it deserved, so I rolled the dice and said it again.
Not 2 Killers, 2 Moon.
Whoa.
Do you know why Fast and the Furious 2 is called Too Fast, Too Furious and not Fast and the Furious 2?
No.
Because they don't own the rights to the Fast and the Furious 2 as a name, because there was already an existing movie called The Fast and the Furious.
Yeah.
And they paid the person who had that the money to take the name, but very cleverly, in an astute move, that person decided to deliberately keep hold of the sequel rights. So if the movie was a smash, he could pump out cheap knockoff movie sequels that looked like they were related to like the Fast and the Furious successful Hollywood movie. And that might seem like a cheap and scuzzy move that you would expect of only certain people. And in answer to your question, yes, it is Roger Corman.
I mean, because this is the problem, right? Cheap and scuzzy are two pejoratives that you can absolutely put on Roger Corman. And they will be, by the dictionary definitions of those words, absolutely correct. But I can't fault Roger Corman. We wouldn't have Scorsese without Corman. We literally wouldn't, right? And this isn't like a... Right, so before we get into this quite interesting episode of Star Trek, so Roger Corman is like a B-movie director, like very much the guy who, well, I've got 25 grand to spare and a weekend off, time to go and make a movie. Like, he's like that guy, right? And he does and he's been going for the guy is 400 years old, right?
And talk about the guy's influence. The original Little Shop of Horrors, which is not a musical, is a movie made by Roger Corman in 3 days with no budget for a bet.
And Jack Nicholson's in it.
Yeah.
And back in the day, he would obviously, the Enterprise doesn't fly itself. So you need to have people on hand to help you make your movie, whether that's runners, whether that's editors, whether that's camera people, whether that's literally people running about getting water for the rest of the crew. And at one point, the kid getting that water was fucking Steven Spielberg. Like, literally was. Like,
yeah.
And the next week, Steven, I've got you a partner to help you load the film or whatever. This is Martin. And we've got a new kid coming in on work experience. Something Lucas, I think. Like, the whole new Hollywood of the 1970s and 80s came from what they affectionately called the Roger Corman School of Filmmaking. And I think he himself has said something to the effect of, yeah, the movies I make are utter shit, but look what I gave you.
Yeah, he's like, to give an idea of how influential he is, there's the entire crew who worked on Aliens were doing that because Roger Corman had to do a shoot in America, so he couldn't use his UK crew. Like, they were all his people. Yeah. And that's why, and they were like, they talk about it, they're like, yeah, we just worked on it at the same level that we do for a Roger Corman movie. It just had the difference that the movie was good.
Yeah, it will be a serious black armband day in my house the day Roger Corman goes.
He's in Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
He's like, he runs the prison, like, very briefly, right, because everybody owes Roger Corman a favour. And that's how Roger Corman makes movies so cheaply, is Roger Corman has no problem falling in those favours. Where he just rings people up and goes, do you remember that? Do you remember that time I got you that audition for that role that you landed that was very good? He goes, yeah, right, I need a helicopter pilot, right? Yeah. It's 2 days of shooting, the dialogue's terrible, and I just need you to come in and out and do it. Can you do it? And he goes, how much do I get paid? Look, did I not mention the audition?
Hey George, you know that fucking massive house that you're in right now, thanks to some nonsense called Star Wars? I
have all your old props?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Just for the amount of work that man has done to keep matte painters in work throughout Hollywood, throughout history. It's one of the weirdest things. There is nothing he has ever produced that has any artistic value whatsoever.
Oh,
but
yeah.
his funeral will have the A-list of Hollywood at it.
If you're not a film person, like, you're welcome here. I'm sorry that we talk about it in the ways that might not always be super accessible. But if you're not a film person and you're like, this Roger Corman guy sounds super interesting, I'm going to look him up. I'm going to watch something that he made. Well, in 2009, Sci-Fi made a movie called Sharktopus that I believe he directed.
If you also want a good watch, there is a Fantastic Four movie from the, is it early 90s?
1994.
Yeah, that he made for a budget of $1 million, which literally isn't available anywhere legally because it was only made because the rights deal they had with Marvel meant that if a movie didn't go into production by a certain point, the rights would default back to Marvel. So it's entirely gone. But Roger Corman, for legal reasons, wasn't allowed to tell anybody who was working on the movie that this is what they were doing. So it's actually quite well made.
Yeah. Do you know what though? It has the Thing. Ben Grimm in it is like a legitimate puppet, and the puppet looks great.
Yeah.
It's like Jim Henson Ninja Turtles level.
It probably was a Ninja Turtle. Like it probably started life as a Ninja Turtle. There's anytime
Hello,
you see anything
Steve
in a
Barron. Hey, remember that time I gave you that job that fucking paid for that conservatory? Well,
yeah. Anybody who's worked in practical special effects. Like I'm just gonna say this: when Roger Corman dies, Adam Savage will upload a 2-hour-long video about his experiences working with Roger Corman. That's
cannot wait.
Should we talk about this episode of Star Trek?
Yes, I'm just going to point out. Right, I have one. So I just opened up my notes. I'm sometimes not great at taking notes for these. I just try and remember the things. And I've wrote down a note that I'm going to have to delete this because if this ever gets out, right, I think I'm going to be taking in for scientific study because I use Evernote, so you put a heading, and the heading is always the name of the episode, and the name of this episode is Suddenly Human, right? And the text of the note is simply the words, "It is weird that we scream." Which I know how I'm going to discuss in context. But and then that's underlined.
See, because I understand the context that applies to this episode, but equally that feels like the sort of note that they would have found, like, you know, at one of the camps after
Oh, it's the type of note that, like,
Mengele had. It's weird that we scream. Underline more research.
It's the type of note that fucking Ted Bundy would be like, oh. So this episode is Suddenly Human.
Yes.
This is first complaint is that on Memory Alpha this is listed as being a bottle episode, which is untrue because
It's not a bottle episode.
It's not a bottle episode. They go to the other ship in the fucking beginning. Yeah. So the plot is they get a distress call from a Talarian
observation craft that has a radiation leak.
Yeah, and Data helpfully tells us that during the war, the Talarians, the Hamas of space, what they do is sometimes they would send out a distress call, and whenever anyone arrived at the ship would just fucking blow up.
Which I've got in my notes about this. I just got that's wonderfully cunty.
Yeah, that's horrible, right? That's really, really bad. That's
Yeah, because you can't not. That's the problem. Is like, no matter how many times it happens, you still can't stop responding to distress signals.
yeah. And then, so they go onto the ship and they find 5 survivors.
Yeah, and the two, and importantly, they also find the 2 flashing tubes prop.
Oh yeah, I did point that out. So they find 5 survivors, 4 of which are Talarian, and 1 of which is a human. Mm-hmm. So they bring them all on board and sort of nurse them back to health. And then the rest of the episode is what can only be described as parenting hijinks.
Yes.
Picard
yes, it is.
Discovers what he would be like as a father.
Yeah, it's quite. I think it's a really. I'm not going to sit here and say this is one of the all-time great Star Trek Next Generation episodes, but what I will say is this is a very Star Trek The Next Generation episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, because it has it's the basic idea that what's right for this kid. It turns out that the Talarians have a thing in their culture where the captain of this Talarian vessel lost his child in the war with the Federation, which has never been mentioned before, I don't think, but has happened.
Got a lot of wars on.
Yeah. So he lost his child to the Federation, which means when he wiped out a colony and there was a baby or toddler left there, under their custom, he was entitled to claim that as like recompense.
Yeah.
And they're worried that the boy was being abused because Bev's a judgmental bitch. It's like he's got signs that he broke an arm and he broke some of his ribs and he's 14, and she immediately goes to torture rather than sports.
Yeah, Laura's immediate reaction to that was, just because your son's a fucking nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you looked at my medical records, by the time I was 14, you would see 5 broken limbs. And I didn't grow an extra one, I just broke one arm twice. When I was a baby, right, and or a toddler, I think I've told the story on this podcast before. You know those little tyke cars? The red ones with the yellow roof. I was playing in the hallway of my house in that, and my neighbour's kid took hold of the back of it and then just started sort of pushing me around, and I was like, "Wee, this is great! I'm in Fast and Furious 2, a Roger Corman picture," which was purely theoretical at the time. And he slammed me into the stairs.
Right.
And 3 days later, my parents were like, "Mark seems to be completely incapable of walking without supporting himself on something." And they took me in to get x-rayed, and the doctors discovered that I had broken my femur so badly that they considered, the doctor, I think the doctor and the nurse, somehow my mum found this out, that the doctors considered calling like CP, like Child Protective Services.
I like the fact that they considered it and didn't just, do it so they could have a check.
And do you know what is weird, right? I'm ragging on my parents here. It's not the first time that happened. The other time was that they took me to the dentist to look at my baby teeth, and my baby teeth were so rotten that the dentist assumed that I had malnutrition. But the problem was that my parents had been feeding me Ribena,
right,
which has a criminally high sugar content. But the adverts at the time were like, "Give this to your kids."
Yeah. If you're an American and you're listening to this, you don't have Ribena in your country because the black currants that they use to make it have like there's some sort of pathogen that lives on the bushes that would kill other plants in your country. So you've banned blackcurrant. So you might not understand this, but to make this clear, even if Ribena literally dissolved your teeth on contact, I would still drink it.
I drink it now. I love it.
Literally,
it's amazing.
one of the most delicious things. It's the reason why in the UK sweets don't come with grape flavour, because that's horrible.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you do that when you can have blackcurrant.
Yeah, blackcurrant is way better. Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of that, like if you were to look at my medical records, my brother's, by the time we were 16, my brother had managed to break every single one of his limbs.
Yep.
And so you would think if either of us was being abused, it was him. But those were all accidents, and all of the abuse in my childhood was emotional.
And you can't X-ray for that.
No, not yet. Maybe in the future.
Yep.
Deanna Troi could do it. Great Troi episode, by the way.
So this was something I wanted to bring up, right? So two things I actually noticed in this episode. I guess I'd never seen Beverly's pips before, because her hair always sits over them. She has 3 pips. She has the equivalent rank as Riker.
Yeah,
which makes sense. Yeah. She is the only one who can override both the captain and Riker. But then Troi, I guess as the ship's counselor, doesn't have any pips, or maybe just can't find anywhere to put them on that fucking thong that she wears. But when she's alone with Picard, she can fucking... He's like, nope. Picard's like, nope, that's it. I'm going back to my duties. And he presses on his computer. And Troi is just like, no, fuck that. And then just turns it off.
Yeah, I do have it. It's like, how many people are there on that vessel who are allowed to do that? And you know what? I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that Troi wasn't allowed to do that last season. I'm going to say that Picard, because we never see Picard like it. Picard talks to Troi, but he never has any therapy. But given the events of Best of Both Worlds, I think it's safe to assume he has had a significant amount of actual therapy now, and understands for his mental well-being that sometimes he just has to do what Troi says.
It's also kind of amazing that the 2 people on the ship who can override the captain are the people in charge of his physical and mental health.
Yes.
Yeah. Which obviously makes sense.
It does obviously make sense. One thing that doesn't make sense about this is, so the reason that Picard has to father the kid is because the Talarians have a fiercely patriarchal society and won't listen to anything from women. And Troi therefore goes, well, actually, given the situation, which is, we think... also, it turns out they do a DNA test and the kid's mum's an admiral.
His grand's an admiral, yeah.
Yeah. So she's like, we need a man to do like the counselling and try and work out and help this boy become back to his culture or whatever, and find out whether he's being abused. And Troi has to give that job to Picard. Because, okay, I know that Bev isn't the only doctor because there are shifts. Troi can't be the only counsellor. There should be at least... She should be... That should be a wing like medical. Like, there should be 2 or 3 staff working in that office.
Yeah, I agree.
For situations like this.
Yeah. Because there's... As well as just things like shore leave and days off, we know for a fact that there are shift patterns on the Enterprise. Yeah. So surely she should only do alpha shift.
Yeah. Like, what... If you're on the night shift, not that night exists in space, but if you're on the night shift and you suffer a debilitating, like you see one of your best friends get disintegrated down to the skeleton in front of you.
Yeah.
So you now need to you get taken off duty and you have to be doing your counselling, which is on a different shift pattern to you, which is even only going to fuck you up even more. Or do Betazoids not sleep? Is she just on call?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. But, again, great Troi episode, because she realises, like, Picard's got to do this, and Picard tries to get out of it.
Yeah, Picard's just like, I fucking hate kids.
I like what he says, which is, Picard goes to her and goes, this might be news to you, counsellor, but I have never considered myself to be very good with children, and Troi delivers the most sarcastic really that has ever been delivered in Star Trek. And he gives a big excuse, and then like Troi just looks at him and goes, "That is the most well-rehearsed excuse I have ever heard."
Yeah, because there's quite a sort of well-known I don't know. I don't know if it's an idiom, but it's basically don't tell anyone anything that you don't want their partner to know as well. And I'm sure that, especially if it's something that's that's a bit weird, because you need to talk about it to someone. And I'm sure that the first time that fucking Riker came on board and Picard was like, right, your number one duty is keep me the fuck away from children. I imagine Riker immediately went to try and went, oh man, you should hear this shit that John Luke just threw at me. Like,
I mean, there's also the fact that every time they encounter it, she's an empath. So every time they encounter a child, she just hears his brain go, oh fuck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She should be like, I know what a silent eye roll sounds like.
Yeah, she literally, and she calls him on it really quickly as well. She says, you're cringing away from your duties. And Picard's like, I'm not cringing. I'm acknowledging my limitations. I was like, it takes, you've got to be very, very secure in your intellectual position to tell Picard he's cringing.
Yeah.
Did you recognise the Talarian captain, who is the dad that has adopted him?
Sort of, right. I sort of recognised him enough to be like, I think I know that guy. But I didn't even recognise him enough to do the Leonardo DiCaprio point at the screen and shout in things, which is how we do it in our house.
Have you ever watched Day of the Dead?
Yes.
You know Bub the zombie?
Shut up.
This is the captain from this episode of the other ship was Bub the zombie.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was literally, it's like, it's on the tip of my brain.
Yeah.
It's ruining me, and then I googled it and I was like
I love Day of the Dead. I actually think, and this is controversial, I actually think I prefer Day of the Dead to Dawn of the Dead. Now, I will qualify that by saying that I acknowledge that Day of the Dead is a much more important and arguably much better made picture. However, there is one thing that I love more than zombie killing action, and that is zombie admin. And like the ways that people who aren't just panicking and trying to figure out how to survive in the immediate aftermath of discovering a zombie apocalypse, but who have maybe been kicking about for 6 months to a year and are just like, well, kind of bored now, so we have to figure out how we're actually going to live in this world, how they go about it, especially if they're fucking scientists. That little zombie trap gate that they have, genius.
Yeah, it's if somebody says that their favourite Live of the Dead trilogy movie is Night of the Living Dead, what that tells me is that they don't really have an appreciation of zombie cinema, because the correct answer is Dawn of the Dead. But Day of the Dead is definitely the hipster answer, where you can go, well, actually, I think you're fine.
I don't know, man. I'd argue that Night of the Living Dead is the hipster answer, because it's just like, well, I just hate racism.
To be fair, I just want to make it clear, you can like both of the other of the Dead movies and dislike racism. There's not any of them that gives like racism a ringing endorsement. No. Like, there's no line in Day of the Dead when he just goes, well, it goes, where they look at the cameras and goes, well, they may be zombies, but at least they're not Japanese, all right?
Yeah. No, he leaves that for Land of the Dead. Land of the Dead is Land of the Dead is like if John Romero had to make a zombie movie for idiots.
Yeah.
They'd be like, hey, you know capitalism? You know how it's not great? Let me spell this out for you.
Nobody was seriously critiquing Romero when he was making the original 2 movies. So he just did whatever he wanted. And then everybody started critiquing them seriously. And it was like interviews with him where they're like, what I really like about your movies is the social criticism. And Romero was like, what? Oh, I didn't realise I was doing that. I better put some in my next one. And then the next movie, Land of the Dead, might as well not have any zombies in it and just be an hour of having a black screen with the white letters capitalism bad on it.
Yeah. Do you think it's because he didn't wear those really thick glasses when he was younger?
Oh, I didn't see that. I put in a coded metaphor for the racism of the Deep South. Jesus, I missed that.
Yeah.
I should have had my glasses on. Yeah, the only... of course it was. You had the only black character be the survivor. He goes, he was black?
And, there was that criticism, that sort of social criticism of him being shot by the white people at the end. Oh, no, we just didn't want him to get out. He kept asking for more money, so we shot him.
Yeah, we didn't want him coming back for a sequel.
Yeah.
What did you think of the squash but Tron? I've got written down.
Tron squash?
Yeah.
Just normal squash, innit?
Oh, so here's the thing. I originally, when I remember watching this, like, first time around, I always have had a problem with Star Trek doing silly space sports.
Yeah.
Because I think that you can think too much of sports as being kind of, like, set. Like, and then you get a bit older and you realise, no, we invented all of this stuff pretty recently. And there's plenty of room for new ones. Like, skateboarding's in the Olympics now. Pickleball, which I refuse to understand, has been taking the world by storm. So maybe this comes out of somebody fucking about with a squash court and just going, well, what if I spray that up there and it becomes huge?
I'm doing an acting class at the moment, and we always do a warm up at the beginning. Right. And the warm up, and usually the warm up has some sort of message for the class that we were going to do. So the warm up will involve like forethought, or it will involve kind of almost like yes anding or something, but in a kind of real sort of hidden way. And then a couple of weeks ago, we played Foursquare. Have you played this?
No, I haven't.
So Foursquare is really interesting. So Foursquare is a ball game, and it has to have. I only know the rules from the way that we played it, but I assume these are the actual rules. It needs to have more than 4 players, and you need to have a grid on the ground that's literally one square divided into 4 smaller squares. And there's one person in each square, and there's a server, and the server bounces the ball, and has to bounce it into another person's square, a bit like Tron squash. They then have to hit the ball so that it bounces into someone else's square, who then one bounce and then out. But if the ball goes out, or if the ball bounces twice, the person in that square has to leave the square, and everyone moves around one corner.
Right, okay.
This is easier to visualize if you see it happening, right? And then another player who was a non-player comes in, and they become the server. And the goal of the game, the winner of the game, is whoever is in the top right-hand square at the end, because you have to put a time limit on it.
Right, okay.
And it's fucking intense. Like, it gets super competitive, because one of the rules that we had, that I don't know if this is an official rule, is that the person who's waiting to come in automatically becomes the ref, and the ref's word is final.
Okay.
There is no arguing. But there's like other rules, like if the ball bounces once in your square and you just smack it right at another player and hit them in the legs without it bouncing, they are out. But if you miss or they dodge it, you are out.
Right. Okay.
It's cool, man. It's an interesting game, and I'm like, this could be my new obsession. If I was 6 years old in the playground, I would want to play this 24/7. But yeah, because I remember the only episode of The Tudors I have ever seen. Actually, there's 2 episodes of The Tudors I have ever seen. One of them is the one in which Anne Boleyn gets her head cut off. Because I had to watch that for work one time.
Right, okay.
And the other one is the pilot. And in the pilot, Henry Cavill and Jonathan Rhys-Meyers play badminton. But it just looks like regular hour-timey badminton.
Yeah.
And I always felt a bit uneasy by that, because I always imagined that sports have to evolve. Like if you went back in time to all the football teams, right? All the Premier League teams, not all of them, right? I'm speaking in generalities here. All the Prem teams, even all the Championship teams, all the old teams Wrexham being one of the oldest, they on their badges they will always say like 18. Like they don't go much further back than like the 1830s.
Mm-hmm.
That's because before that, football was just a completely different sport.
Yeah,
Because the Scots hadn't yet invented the concept of passing forward.
I feel we need to bring up at this point something very important about how all posh people are liars, which is that the School of Rugby likes to claim that rugby was invented by somebody who was brilliantly and expertly disobeying the rules of football. But it is important to note that the rules of football were not codified until about 10 years after rugby was invented.
Yeah. So because this is an interesting conversation I like to have with Americans, because every now and again I feel like Americans get put down upon quite a lot in the world of culture, and every now and again I feel like we should be like, do you know what, you're actually kind of in the right on this, which is that we call football, and we get annoyed when people call football soccer, but they're actually technically more correct. Because there are two types of football: rugby football and association football. And association got shortened to soccer. So yeah, the rugby and soccer are the two names of the versions of football. It's a bit like how in Ireland the GAA encompasses both hurling and Irish football, but Irish football gets called GA.
Right. Okay, I didn't know that about Irish.
Yeah, that's right. This is fucking Sports Corner on the Strath's Right podcast. Yeah. All the fucking nerds and autistics just tuned out for 10 minutes.
I will say, if you are an American though, and you do, you might be on the right on that one, but the fact that you allow your sports teams to move cities is frankly
madness. It's capital. It's George Romero wouldn't be furious until you pointed out to him that capitalism sucks. To fully explain how batshit that is, I'm an Arsenal supporter. We moved our stadium from Woolwich Arsenal, which is just south of the Thames, to Highbury, which is north of the Thames. I think it is a movement of in total maybe about 5 miles. We regularly still get called the Nomads by Spurs, who are our most hated rivals. And I should point out that move happened in, I believe, 1892, right? Yeah. Celtic and Rangers will continue to hate each other on religious grounds long after it's been scientifically proven that there is no God.
To get off sports, Wesley Crusher says the most depressing thing that anyone's ever said in Star Trek. He is introducing the human kid to a banana split.
Yeah.
And he says, this is a banana split, and it is quite possibly the greatest thing in the known galaxy. Right, now, what I'm going to say is, that sounds, if we finally escape this planet and get to the stars, and in all of those travels around the universe, we never find anything better than a banana split, then what was the fucking point?
Yeah. I was talking to Laura about this the other day, and it's about like matters of perspective and the kind of people thinking that some things are objectively amazing. I think we were talking about the concept of steak and blowjob day, which is like this. Oh, it's like it's the best manly day in the world. Steak and blowjob day. It's the two best things. And I'm like, I don't even particularly like steak. Like I'll have a steak. But I'll never be like, oh, steak is the pinnacle of food, because steak's just meat cooked, right? There's nothing, and even then, it's not done. It's literally in the name, not done well. So, and I don't get me wrong, I certainly appreciate a blowjob. I think they're wonderful, good times. But I just much prefer hand jobs and hamburgers. So, you know, Wesley Crusher is absolutely legally free to believe that banana splits are the best thing in the known universe, but it says so much more about him than it does about human potential.
It also definitely highlights that Wes is definitely at this point in the series still a virgin.
Yeah.
Because Riker sat there when he says that, and Riker's like, Like Riker's like, I can name 14 species that I fucked. That were better.
Yeah, Deanna could hear his eyes rolling on the other side of the Enterprise. Oh, there's a disturbance in the Force. Someone has claimed in front of Riker that something is better than blowjobs. Beta Shift are going to be in for a deep cleaning session tonight.
To get into like the meat of this episode, we've discussed that one of the things that makes a good Star Trek episode is when it asks a good big question.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good big question because I genuinely, towards the end of this, I'm like, I don't know what the right thing to do here is. Because the idea is that this kid was like, what, maybe he remembers his parents dying, so like maybe like 2 or 3, and then he's been raised by this captain from the Talarians for all that time, but he's still got living relatives in the Federation. What do you do?
Yeah, so the scene where the Captain Ender comes aboard and Picard kind of confronts him and says, he is a human, he has living relatives, and we have signs of abuse. And Ender's like, what the fuck are you talking about? To which Picard replies, well, he's had all these broken bones. And then Ender just laughs and goes, yeah, those are from being a child. And then he kind of goes, well, I've raised him. I love him. How does that... And then Laura was immediately like, I am definitely on this guy's side. And I completely agree. Like, he really is the only family that kid has ever actually known. And just because we don't understand that culture and we can't really empathize with that culture, clearly that kid can. That's why the whole thing about the Talarians don't, when they're in pain or when they're in mourning, they don't scream or cry. They make quite a kind of guttural, throatal moan. An almost kind of continuous moan, which is why I wrote down, it is weird that we scream. Because it's weird that we make that sound when we're in pain. I mean, we can explain it. It's because we want attention from other humans to come and help us. But it's just bizarre that we do that.
Yeah, I mean, because it's weird that it's a scream, because it could quite easily just be like if you just went bing bong like that, it would serve the same function.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wouldn't be weird to do that if everybody did that.
Yeah, that's it.
But if somebody did do that now, you'd be like, what the fuck? I do think this is an important episode as well, because it does finally prove something important about the Federation, because the Federation likes to talk a big game about its tolerance for other ways and cultures, but this is the first time we've had them interface with a culture that is essentially really annoying.
Yeah.
Like, they do a high-pitched scream, they don't respect women, they're just awful.
Yeah, because at least Klingons are fun. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which
you
also
get drunk
brings
with
me,
a Klingon.
You mentioned that this episode asks a big question, and I agree. I think I disagree on the nature of the big question, because to me, the setup for the question is a kid orphaned by war from a society that is not part of the Federation, taken in by the opposite society, raised by parents maybe against their own nature, and kind of left to explore who they are as a person in the universe. And my big question is, why the fuck didn't we ask Worf anything?
Yeah. It's Worf appears in this episode a bit, but not enough when he would be the perfect person to speak to. Because Worf, this is Worf. If Worf's brother that he has had found out he was alive when he was 14, not when he was an adult.
Yeah.
So
this is opposite Worf.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting, and I do like the fact that he responds by asking Worf originally if he's been captured, because he thinks he's been captured, and then has a go at Worf for accepting orders from women, and Worf just immediately shuts that bullshit down.
Yeah, right on it. Yeah.
He's like, no, this is human culture. Women are just as capable in human culture as men of achieving anything. So no.
Yeah, fuck you.
Fuck you. I will continue to follow orders from people of a higher rank than me. Yeah. Which I think literally only includes Bev on this ship.
I believe it probably Data, Bev, and
but Bev's the only woman who outranks.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Assuming there isn't another commander working a different, because there must be somebody of at least somebody. So who's running the other shift when because Riker and Picard are on together. So when they go, it's got to be free shifts. It's got to be 3 8-hour shifts. One assumes.
I think it's just if I had to guess, I'd say it's a sort of rotation system. We know that Data occasionally runs the night shift. So Data is third in command. And he captains the night shift. I do know that if a situation arises where they it really should be Picard taking care of us, he just gets called.
Yeah.
But I think I imagine Picard and Riker sort of, they don't start at 9 a.m. together. I imagine they overlap. I imagine Riker maybe takes over at the end of Delta shift or Charlie shift, and then maybe finishes a couple hours before Picard, and then maybe
It must be super frustrating for Data that I'm guessing legally he can't just stay on the bridge. The idea that Data has downtime is ridiculous, because in any time he is not directly, the amount of computational power in Data's brain, he can do anything in the space between the words you're telling him. And he doesn't need to sleep, so it must be annoying. I'm guessing he does night shifts and stuff occasionally to cover, but every time it's banking up extra time off for him, and he's just I literally, I have to assume that every time a season ends before the next season starts, Data just takes a 3-month fucking jolly.
Yeah.
Where he just goes, I've got time off, and I'll go do a hiking tour of the Lake District or something. I don't know. Or something more interesting, but on a different planet.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you reckon, because they give the kid back to the Talarians at the end, and he's got a mum who's an admiral, do you reckon that was, because she's got to go visit him, the Gran, at some point, you assume?
I guess so, but... Right, so to fill in the blanks, maybe if you haven't watched the episode, we get photographs of this kid when he's a toddler with his parents. And interestingly, if you take the timeline back, if you go back the 12 years to when the photos would have been taken, his dad is the first person chronologically in the timeline to be wearing the next gen uniform in the Star Trek universe.
Oh. Okay, that is interesting.
Is it? But so they're on this planet. They're on this kind of Starfleet outpost that gets attacked by the Talarians, and that's when he gets kidnapped would be the technical dictionary definition term.
It's very interesting, because they are explaining it as saying it was a Starfleet outpost that was attacked and destroyed by the Talarians, but later on you get the captain of the Talarian ship, and he's like, I led the raid against the Federation interlopers, because obviously the whatever the situation that started this war, the Talarians believe that planet to be part of their territory.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting that it's one line and it's oh right, okay, it's not as black and white.
Fair enough. I imagine it would be that thing of well, in human culture, the living relative would have custody, but that culture doesn't matter if it's a law being talked about on Talarian soil, as it were.
Yeah. And in addition to that, there's the fact that he's 14, which is, in Talarian culture, means he's allowed to make his own decisions about this sort of stuff. But equally does mean that if his grandmother took him back to Federation space, I don't know what... We've not talked about what the age of consent for legal stuff is in Starfleet. and it must be different for different species because different people age and mature at different rates.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're talking maybe, well, if it's 16, 2 years, and if it's 18, 4 years, she gets to spend with her grandson, at which point you assume he will fuck off back to the Talarians.
Yeah, exactly.
If he doesn't want to be there.
No.
Yeah, so...
Because our culture would probably suck as far as he was concerned.
Yes.
The only lasting memory he has of our culture is sitting next to the body of his dead mother.
Yeah.
And what's that going to do? Turn him into a Batman?
He's not been doing Batman training. He should already be on that path if he wants the Batman.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. That's it. Say what you want about Batman, but Bruce Wayne had that down from day one.
If the interesting thing is, like, as well, there has been a war with the Talarians. There's a peace and a treaty in place that's mentioned, but it's still quite icy. But you imagine that something like this could actually really help, like, the relations. If you have, if Talaria has an official visit from a Starfleet admiral who's there for no political reason, she's just there to visit her grandson, who is a Talarian culturally, and she respects all of that. That seems like it would be. The only problem being she will, of course, try to destroy their planet because she's a Starfleet admiral.
I didn't get these pips because I'm mentally fucking all there, son.
Starfleet admirals are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. It goes Starfleet admirals. Next down is the Borg. Actually, no. Sorry, Starfleet admirals is at the top. Next down is Starfleet admirals working with the Borg, which does happen in, I think, season 3 of Picard.
Next down is just Starfleet admirals who have travelled back in time to work with the Borg.
I maintain this. I get that they apparently are bandying around the idea of doing a Picard-style series, but for Janeway. And if they do that, I just want it to be Janeway's trial. Because even if you go, oh, that was future Janeway, modern-day Janeway didn't do any of that stuff with the Borg. Fine, okay, I accept that. But Janeway's crimes committed through Voyager are vast and terrifying.
Yep. Yeah. It would be, because I guess it's again, not to just take this back to why the fuck wasn't this a Worf episode, but that was that thing of Star Trek The Next Generation started airing before The Undiscovered Country, like years before The Undiscovered Country came out, and all of a sudden there was a Klingon on the bridge, the same way that there was a Russian on the bridge of the original Enterprise to make us go, oh, I guess in the future we just find peace and just figure this out. Like that would be a great inroads to go to the Talarians and say, if you don't have to join Starfleet, but if you at least become part of the Federation, surely this proves to you that we will be respectful of your culture.
Yeah,
and kind of let it go, like, because I mean, Star Trek, Starfleet, and the Federation, obviously, like, their whole things are like the French liberty, egalitarianism, and fraternity or whatever.
Yeah.
But because there's an episode of Lower Decks about there's a great payoff to this. It's we go to Ferenginar, the Ferengi homeworld, and who's the fucking not Nog Rom is the new Grand Magus, along with his Bajoran wife, and they still, like, they're not cool on women, but it's about Ferengis wanting to join the Federation.
Right. Okay.
And it's good. I won't spoil it because the payoff is incredible, and you should definitely watch it.
Also, just to jump ahead, Nog in Deep Space Nine might be one of the best Starfleet officers that we ever see. Like, the fact that he regularly, once he joins Starfleet, uses his specifically, it is one of the best displays of, like, diversity being a strong suit, because there are so many times where his ability to think like a Ferengi puts him 10 steps ahead of whoever he's dealing with, when he's like, well, hold on a minute, no, why is everyone here? What's going on? What are they after? And all the stuff like, what do you mean what they're after? And he goes, right, nobody comes and does something like this unless there's a profit.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it is that theme that the Ninja Turtles do issue, which is that if we work together, what makes us different also makes us stronger.
Yeah.
This is an apocrypha, right? This isn't an official Star Trek canon, but I do think it is something that they should work in, because it wouldn't break anything. Nog in Star Trek Apocrypha is one of the very, very, very few people to actually legitimately beat the Kobayashi Maru. And the way that he does it is that when I guess it would have been the Romulans at the time, when the Romulans appear and say, we have this is in the neutral zone, if you come and get it, we'll start a war. And Nog apparently just responds, name your price. and the computer can't handle that. So it just breaks.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Oh, I love Nog. He's one of the best characters. We should mention the kid stabs Picard.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
because this has all gotten a bit much for him, and he assumes that if he stabs Picard, he'll be executed. Which is when Picard goes, "We've not been taking this kid's desires into this, have we?" And then lets him off. So a lot of people have stabbed Picard, and a lot of people have walked away from it. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
He's got an artificial heart, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that sturdier than a normal heart? Because if I was going to have an artificial heart, I'd be like, well, can you make it from titanium?
Can you make it stab-proof?
Yeah, because I don't want. Because my original heart not being stab-proof is what we were in this situation.
Actually, do you know what? While you're in there, do you want to just make all my organs stab-proof?
Yeah.
I feel like if humans have a design flaw, it's that we are relatively easy to stab.
While you're in there, just put in the thing from a communicator that lets people lock onto me to beam up.
Yeah, I just think I know. Yeah.
It's not like it's. I mean, to be fair, it's not like Picard's concern. It's like, I can't have too many parts book at me, because if I eventually have everything replaced, I'll just be an android. But yeah, okay, this is a good episode of Star Trek. That's what I'll say. Not like, I don't think, like we said before, with the little run of the last 4 has all been stuff you have to see. This isn't one you have to see, but it's a great example of good Star Trek done well.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Right.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.